Saudi Cup and welcome to another episode here for the Funky Pod, Mindful Media and Communication. And as you see from the headline, unless you are on X, because we're stripping headlines from X, but it's just a quick diss towards Elon Musk. As you can see from the title of the episode, we're talking about data a little bit. So let's dive into it. Let's become data detectives for today. Grab our digital magnifying glasses because we're trying to kind of crack open this complex code of data mining within the media. So get ready, because we're going to follow those data trails into ethically ambiguous, I think it's ambiguous world of how companies monitor and leverage your digital footprint. So put on your skepticism goggles as we dive deep into this shadowy, grayish topic. And first off, we start with trying to decode data mining. So what exactly is data mining, right? In its core, it involves using software to identify useful patterns in very big data sets. Now, you know that media companies, they track our data everywhere, right? You see those pop-ups if you are in Europe. You see pop-ups on websites, hey, we're going to use your data, and you have to say okay to use it. In other countries, it's just like a note on the bottom of the website or on the top, like, hey, if you continue using this website, you agree to let us use your data and so on. Your phones, they ask you if they can track and so on. So that's all lots of data, right? And now then data mining is not only collecting this, but also trying to make sense of it, of course. Okay, so now we know that, right? So that we know that media companies, they apply this data mining approach to track information about users' online behaviors. What we click, share, purchase, and so on, in order to microscopically categorize the audience. Because the more you can categorize the audience means the better you know your audience, the better you can target them. Because that's the overall goal. If they can do that, this will allow them to serve up those meticulously customized ads and recommendations catered to like your, mine, our very interest. It's why you see maybe irrelevant ads after browsing a product once. You're like, hey, now I see products that are similar and that really fit what I like. How come? So they're tapping into your, mine, our digital footprint through relentless data mining. And well, we're a media podcast, right? So let's talk about the importance of data in the media. So why do I talk about this here? So looking at this vast data extraction, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why media companies, media conglomerates do this too. So it's not just companies trying to sell products. It's media companies that are doing this as well, of course. And there are, as always, a few theories behind it. For example, user gratification. And we talked about this theory before. So companies, of course, they aim to optimize content down to the last pixel based on our mined data. And the more they optimize it, the more we are gratified, the more we consume it. And there's also reception theory, right? Reception theory we talked about as well before. If you use data analytics to craft like those irresistible personalized messages, based on the liking of the audience, then we're more receptive towards it. Makes sense. And this exchange relies on users, of course, trusting companies and trusting companies' transparency about how our data gets used. So we usually give our consent to companies to track our data if we trust them. Or, of course, if they offer something irresistible to us and ask us for our data in exchange. Your Gmail account, for example. Sometimes this kind of social contract, however, could be violated, right? And we're going to talk about this in a second when we try to scrutinize it a little bit further, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, I mean by that, we talk about privacy concerns. And there's another theory, another approach like deontological ethics, which focuses on rights like privacy. And data mining often clashes with this right because data mining, of course, allows companies to stockpile user information without clear consent. They just tell us, hey, we're going to use this and this and this and this data. You're cool with it? And you just click OK to everything because you want to use the app, right? Just to make it easy, just think about all the suspect insights Facebook, Google, and TikTok likely have assembled on you by now, right? In theory, apps, websites, and so on are by law, by most laws, depending where you are, of course, but generally speaking, only allowed to collect data that's needed to provide you with the service that they're offering. But because the ads, for example, are part of the service, they will argue that they say, we need as much data as possible to give you the best ads possible because it's also part of our service. So there are also always ways around it. Okay. And that's why I'm saying like ethics is like a bit of a tough topic here, because of course companies don't want to be necessarily the most ethical, because that contradicts their goal of being the most valuable, making the most money. Also, of course, we've seen lots of frequent data breaches which exposed like the information being actually mined, right? If you remember in 2018, all the way back then, Facebook had like over 15 million user data stolen. And the question is, are companies obligated to inform and to compensate people when those breaches occur? And it's a pretty thorny question, because you trust that company with your data. Now someone breaks into this company, the website, database, and steals your data. If it would be real life, if I trust my bank with my money and someone breaks in, would assume like we're in the 1960s or something, 1930s, and steals my money physically, I would be entitled to get reimbursed. It's still the same. If someone hacks our bank and steals the money electronically even, we have insurance. What's with our data, right? For example. So there are just lots of questions out there, of course. It's hard to find an answer though, of course, because data is while it's tangible, it's also intangible to some extent, right? You're like, what actually is data and like how is it being stored? Difficult question. But more importantly, I think we have to talk about also the manipulation and bias when it comes to data. Because mined data, it also allows companies to potentially manipulate user views. Yeah, we talked about agenda setting theory before, which suggests, as you remember, that media can impact our focus by highlighting certain topics and maybe ignoring other parts of the whole topic, right? So curated data and curated data filters content to align with specific agendas. This could be done intentionally or maybe even unintentionally, just because the algorithm works in that way. It's not like Facebook says, I want everybody to be like a right-wing extremist. No. But if you're just going down the road by coincidence, maybe even because you watched some videos and like, thinking about that video, and then all of a sudden you get like more and more and more and more of that, you just go down that road, right? So manipulation is, of course, a big problem. And another theory, which we also had before already, the spiral of silence theory, if you remember that one, it says that controversial opinions, they get suppressed. Yeah, meaning echo chambers, buzzword again, echo chambers, created by the selective data usage, isolate users from diverse perspectives. So the question then that arises is, do algorithms actually undermine public discourse through tunnel vision recommendations? The answer could be yes. So that's another difficult subtopic to consider, because of course it's happening, and it's happening a lot. And do we recognize that we're trapped in such an echo chamber, for example? And going down the road even further, if you talk about profiling and targeting, like data mining also enables extensive user profiling. Companies, they categorize us based on age, gender, race, interests, and whatnot to target ads. But inappropriate or offensive targeting happens based on like problematic data assumptions. For example, think of maybe clumsy gender stereotypes, like women getting cleaning product ads, for example. And that's of course an ethical blind spot that also needs to be addressed. It might have been like an outdated, silly example right now, but I picked this to highlight what it means, like this user profiling gone wrong, right? So just to make a point here. So I hope you can see that this would not only be like women getting cleaning products, this could also go into like not only gender specifics, but also race specifics and so on. And let's be honest, it's also a very capitalistic approach, obviously, right? We might even call it surveillance capitalism. Some researchers, they warn that uncontrolled data mining enables this surveillance capitalism. If you look at this mass user data commodification for profit and influence. So commodification, as you probably know, commodity means it's something like easily accessible, something that's been used a lot, for lack of a better term. So mass user data just becomes a commodity now that companies want to have. They buy the data from data mining companies and so on in order to gain profit and influence. Tech whistleblowers such as Edward Snowden, who you might remember, they exposed the scope of monitoring through leaked documents back then, right? And as data mining expands into areas like emotion detection, of course, facial recognition and so on, ethical risks, of course, they heighten surrounding consent, because do we give consent to companies to detect our emotion, for example? Do you want them to know how you feel in the moment? I'm not sure, right? Again, a very difficult ethical question here. Let's look at a case study. Again, of course, I have to pick like the famous case study, right? That everyone or most people probably remember, even though it's been quite a while already. That's such a famous example. And because no data ethics discussion is complete without mentioning Cambridge Analytica, right? And it's been 2016 already, but back then, up to, I think, 87 million Facebook users had data improperly mined to target political ads without consent. So this is back to what we said earlier, like the deontological ethics. It's a nightmare in this regard, right? But it's not just Cambridge Analytica. Those questionable practices, they of course happen on smaller scales too. Right? Personalized ads, they can reflect tone deaf or offensive profiling, as you said earlier, based on those mind preferences. Lots of social platforms have faced backlash for ethnic affinity tracking, for example. So oversight and accountability are incredibly important, and they'll sound like boring topics, but those boring topics could actually help protect our data. And speaking about protecting our data, right? Those threats that we just mentioned now, the last 10 minutes, of course they exist. So gaining awareness, and I hate that. If you know me, you know I hate the word awareness. But gaining awareness in this case is important through media literacy. And you see my emphasis on media literacy because we talk about this in almost every episode. Media literacy and taking action helps to safeguard your, mine, our data. So very basic, but enable privacy settings on platforms. Just do it. Most platforms, so that platforms usually, social media platforms, websites, apps, and so on, they have like two different approaches to how they run or how they store and how they go about with collecting data. Either they have it by default, data privacy by default, which means you sign up and by default, they're not tracking you, they're giving you all your privacy. Or it's privacy by design, which means you can enable the privacy settings, but the default option is we track all your data, but if you want, you can opt out. Of course, most platforms go for the latter one that I just mentioned. They go for the default setting is we get all your data, but if you want, you can opt out, right? So you have to opt out. Enable those privacy settings. Tell if your iPhone asks you, do you want the app to allow you to track you. No, say ask app not to track. It's just one push of a button. On a social media platform, it might take like more, like go into the settings, privacy, third-party data and whatnot, but it's worth it. So enable privacy settings on platforms, okay? Use secure browsers. Maybe Chrome, which is still the only browser that allows cookies, for example. Maybe Chrome is not the best solution. Just saying. Yeah, turn off ad tracking in apps, what I just said earlier. So small steps add up. And of course, I know what you might be saying, like, but I'd rather see relevant ads than random ads. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's the KO argument that all the platforms say. Don't you want to rather see related ads than random ads? Yeah. But be aware that this means that your data, your personal data, your behavioral data ends up everywhere. And if you're cool with that, you're like, yeah, whatever, I don't care who has my data. Yeah. But it needs to be said that this might not just be advertisement. Who knows who will buy your data down the road, right? Like I said earlier, this could lead like to the echo chamber. It could see like you seeing just certain political content. This could be like they trying to manipulate you into something, not just into buying stuff, but also into how you think, how you behave, who your friends are, and so on. So this all adds up. Okay. Of course, there are laws like in Europe, the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, I believe. And as you know, I recorded a podcast here out of Thailand. In Thailand, we have the PDPA, which is similar to the GDPR, that establishes like user data rights. And this shows some kind of progress, right? But let's be honest, it's nice to have, but it's still like just a pop-up, right? Maximum it's a pop-up or it's just a notification down on the website or something. So let's be honest, that the true reform requires tech companies adopting more consensus policies that value consent and transparency in data use, not just those legal minimums. Because the legal stuff is just like, oh yeah, you should be like the minimum thing, right? So that you're not a criminal. But tech companies, they should be not just thinking, oh, I don't want to be a criminal. They should be like, I want to act morally right, right? So this should be the guiding light, in my opinion. And as an individual, we could use like tools like VPNs, anonymized accounts, encrypted messaging to protect ourselves even more. And so be aware of risks before sharing personal info or any kind of media online, of course, because your vigilance actually makes a difference. Okay, before I go even more into like teaching mode, I'm sorry, but I think this is a very important topic. So what's the road ahead, right? To wrap things up. So I think data mining, as it evolves, we have to balance the benefits while minimizing the ethical costs. So responsibly mined data could improve experiences and enable positive change based on media theories, just like the two-step flow that we talked about in the last episode, actually. But realizing this future, I think, requires asking tough questions, such as technologies like effective computing and biometrics. Like, do we want this to be part of the data collection, or don't we? Right? Because while you say, okay, it's cool, might be cool that you know what I like and you show me like ads to what I like. But if we go that road down further, then, hey, we have biometric data that we're using, right? So is it cool if the companies can collect this as well? So that's why I'm saying we have to think about it. Also, do we understand societal impacts of algorithms? Like how algorithms actually share opinions? What about AI now? AI is the latest trend, right? Everyone's on the AI hype train. How does AI affect privacy? Like, how does AI work? AI consumes data and learns from the data it consumes. So if it consumes private data, then will AI create more private content or even more targeted content? But then who accesses the content? Or who accesses the data, sorry. So then your data just gets automated. Like it's just in the AI. Your personal private data is just part of the AI training, basically, of the AI brain consciousness. Can this whole thing entrench bias? So we gotta stay critical. Critical thinking is more important than ever. And it feels like it's more exhausting than ever because it's just so easy to give in and be like, no, the tech people, they just know, like, it's cool. I'm having fun. I just follow the flow, go with the flow. It's important to stay critical. Okay. But hey, while those challenges persist, right, through public pressure and policy reform, we have the chance to actually advocate for consent requirements, transparency, and oversight around data mining, which is great. So I'm going to wrap up by saying that digital rights matter. Our digital rights matter. So keep your eyes open and your keyboards ready. Because as I say, staying vigilant, staying critical is more important than ever. Because if you just give in, it's hard to get out of your bubble. Okay. So that kind of concludes that quick deep dive into the data mining intricacies. I'm curious, like, what stands out for you or what surprised you? Maybe like the ethical dimensions. Do you have any data privacy protection tips? Is there something that you're doing? Like, I'm only using the Brave browser, for example, or things like this. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So let's keep this, in my opinion, very vital conversation going. And yeah, stay safe. Don't forget, because, well, we are taking, what a terrible call to action. We are taking privacy very serious, and we want to talk more about it with more people. So like, share, subscribe, leave a review. I had to say it, because I do want to reach a wider audience, obviously, to have like broader discussions. It just feels wrong to say that at the end of like a data privacy episode. But yeah, stay safe. I mean it. Take care. And of course, we will talk soon. Until next time, Sawadee Krap.